So ABC transporters means ATP binding cassette transporters. So if you see a cell, we have to transport materials across the cell membrane, maybe from outside into the cell or from inside to the outside of the cell. So don't think that always this transport is in a passive manner. That means without the involvement of uh, energy. Most of the time, this transport needs energy, and this transport which needs energy is heavy winds are blowing. From morning also we had a heavy wind. Now, okay. So this transport which requires energy, this kind of transport is mediated by ATP binding acids. This ATP binding acids are the energy currency, that is ATP, and this will aid in the transport of materials across cell membrane. Okay, so imagine the function of ATP binding acids. So imagine we have a pesticide inside a cell, and we have very high activity of ATP binding acids. And these pesticides, these ATP binding acids, what they will do is they will actively excrete this pesticide from inside the cell to the outside. They will throw out this pesticide from the cell because of the enhanced activity of this ATP binding acids. Okay, so this is how this is involved in the excretion because they will remove the pesticide, excrete the pesticide actively from the cell to the outside. So that's what they do. There are several families of ATP binding acids from ABCs A to H. Just a minute, I will just close the windows. Okay, this ATP binding acids, we have several families. 8 families are there actually from ABCA to H, named from ABCA to H. And these ATP binding acids are also found to be involved in the resistance to many insecticide groups, of which the family ABCB is the one which is mostly involved in insecticide resistance. So ATP binding acids is nothing but they have energy, and with the help of this energy they actively excrete the pesticide from the cell. So once the pesticide is removed, excreted from the cell, the pesticide may not be able to exert its toxicity. So we have about 8 different families of ABC transporters, of which the ABCB family is mainly involved in pesticide resistance. So this is just one pictorial representation of ATP binding acids. See, you can see it over here. These are the membrane. We have the transmembrane proteins, and you can see it over here. This is outside the cell. Just a minute. This is the membrane. This is the transmembrane protein. This is outside the cell, inside the cell. Here you can see ATP. This ATP binds to this ATP binding acid. So we have one material over here. So once ATP binds over here, there will be a change in the conformation, structural conformation of the protein, and it will lead to the excretion of this material. And once the material is excreted, ATP will be broken down into cleaved into ADP and phosphate. Just a minute. Correct. മെയിൽ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ആ സാർ മെയിൽ So this is how it does. It will ATP will bind to this ATP binding cassettes, leads to a conformational change in the transmembrane protein, and it will lead to the excretion of the pesticide. So this is how ATP binding cassettes are involved in pesticide resistance. Is it fine? So with this, we are coming to an end of physiological mechanisms of resistance. Shall I move to the next one? Behavioral mechanism.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The behavioral resistance, that is very simple mechanism. Say, if you are spraying an pesticide in a crop, the insect will simply move away from the crop and it will avoid the treated area. This is nothing but behavioral resistance. Sorry. Class roll number. Swapna, what's your roll number? Swapna?
Hello, sir. 2020 21 015.
Sorry, 2020 21 is 21 അല്ലേ?
21 015
015. സ്വപ്നയുടെ ഇനിഷ്യൽ എന്താ?
M.
സ്വപ്ന എം. Mansur was calling that. Okay. So we were discussing that insects, if you spray an area, if the insect move away, avoid the treated area till the effect of the pesticide is lost. It is nothing but behavioral resistance. If you spray on the upper surface of the leaf, leaving the under surface unsprayed, if the insect move and settle down on the under surface of the leaf, if you are spraying a contact pesticide, systemic pesticides, the story is different. Spraying a contact pesticide, spraying only on the upper surface, insect moves from the upper surface to lower surface, it will escape the exposure to pesticide. So that is nothing but behavioral resistance. Sometimes if you are spraying a fruit tree, say mango, you usually spray the periphery of the tree. So in what insect will do? Insect will move into the inside the canopy. So because of the movement of the insect into the canopy, insect will again avoid the exposure. So this kind of resistance is nothing but modification in the insect behavior to avoid the toxicity of pesticide. So this is one simple mechanism. There is nothing much change happening, only the behavioral mechanism which helps in the behavioral, maybe can be called as an avoidance mechanism, which will enable the insect to reduce the toxicity of pesticide. Clear? Behavioral resistance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next one is a new mechanism of resistance, which was recently, actually it was the first paper appeared in 2019. This is the one which I told you in the definition we told is most of the definition. If you see the resistance definition, always we use this a hereditary thing. Resistance is hereditary. But if this kind of mechanism is detected frequently in an insect, in different kinds of insect, the definition of insecticide resistance has to change, because nowadays we have a very good facility to carry out metagenomic studies. That means there are a lot of microorganisms residing inside an insect, and these microorganisms can contribute to resistance, not due to any physiological change or genetic change in the insect, only because of the presence of a microbe. So if you check the insect, we may not get anything. We may not get an enhanced level of enzyme. We may not get a mutation in the gene of the insect. Nothing we will get. The only thing, if you go for a metagenomic study, then only we will find out that there is a microbe which is helping the insect to develop resistance. So the first report that was in Proceedings of National Academy of Science USA, that was first report was published in that journal. Here, it was they conducted the study with Riptortus pedestris. Riptortus is the cowpea pod bug. So phenitrodothione is an insecticide routinely used in cowpea ecosystem. So we have a microbe Burkholderia. This Burkholderia is a microbe which has the ability to degrade phenitrodothione. So I am repeating, phenitrodothione is an insecticide which is used in cowpea ecosystem, and we have a microbe Burkholderia. This Burkholderia has the ability to degrade phenitrodothione. So if we are using phenitrodothione in a cowpea field, the population of Burkholderia in the soil increases. The function of Burkholderia is to detoxify this phenitrodothione naturally. So a farmer, he has some cowpea, he had some problem, he used phenitrodothione in the field. So since phenitrodothione is there, already if Burkholderia is there in the soil, the population of Burkholderia increases. The function of Burkholderia is to detoxify phenitrodothione. Okay. So if any nymph of Riptortus pedestris emerges and comes into contact with the soil, this nymphs acquires this phenitrodothione degrading Burkholderia from the soil. And this Riptortus pedestris nymphs will have an association, symbiotic association with this phenitrodothione degrading Burkholderia. It acquires it from the soil itself. So what will happen if the farmer go for a spray of phenitrodothione next time?
Insect become
Yes, because it has a symbiotic association with phenitrodothione degrading microbe Burkholderia. So here, see, it doesn't require number of generations to develop any resistance. Within a single generation, it developed resistance. Whether there is any genetic change happening in the insect? Yes or no? No, there is no genetic change. That's why our definition of resistance, where we always say it is hereditary, sometimes it may not be. And it's also now it's reported in fruit fly Bactrocereus dorsalis, and in where Citrobacter, there is a microbe called Citrobacter which is involved in the degradation of trichlorophone, another opium. See, slowly the reports are increasing. So this is one kind of mechanism which we have to take care of. Now our head Manisar has given, we were discussing about that Tribolium castaneum, which is resistant to malathion and all. Now for a biotechnology student, we have given a metagenomic study for that. We will be taking this resistant strain as well as the susceptible strain, and we will be carrying out a metagenomic study to detect whether there is any change in the microbe, the resistant as well as the susceptible insects. So that's what we are trying to do. We are taking up that kind of study also. Then coming to the next kind of mechanism, that is insecticide resistance in parthenogenetic insect. That is pretty easy, because if there is a resistant insect, and if that insect is a aphid, which is parthenogenetic, if that insect is parthenogenetic, all the offsprings will be resistant. So pretty easy for a parthenogenetic insect to. That means asexually reproducing insects. It can develop resistance pretty quickly. So this is with respect to the resistance mechanism. Now I will have a short table wherein I will just brief about different factors and how these factors affect resistance development that we will discuss. So we have several. It can be biological factors. It can be genetic factors. It can be the kind of use of pesticides. So use pattern, etc. So we'll see it one by one. First one is the biological factor. The first one is population size. If the size of population is pretty low, that means if the number of individuals pest is very low, the chances of development of resistance is low. You can see it over here. Here it is. If the chances of development of resistance is lower, here this column will be there. If the chance of development is resistance is more, it will be higher. So if the population size is small, the chance of development of resistance is low. If the population size is more, the chance of development of resistance is high. The reason is if there is less population, we can almost treat the area pretty thoroughly and we can bring down the population pretty easily. That's one thing. If the population size is more, there is a chance of more survival of individuals. So that is one way, one chance where we can have higher chances of development of resistance. Another thing is that if the population size is more, the diversity also can be more. That means there is a chance of individuals with resistance, more chance of individuals with resistance. So the chance of resistance development is also higher. And second one, reproductive potential. That means if the insect give rise to more individuals in a generation, if the fecundity is more, the chance of development of resistance is also high. If the fecundity is low, the chance of development of resistance is also low because the number of individuals are again low. The kind of reproduction is low, then the chance of development is also low in it. Then generation turnover. That means that I will ask you if the insect is able to have more generations per year. What is the chance of development of resistance if it is less or more?
More.
More. If we have more generations, if the insect completes its life cycle quickly, it can develop resistance also quickly. Now, the next point we have discussed just now is the type of reproduction. If it is asexual reproduction, just like parthenogenesis, development of resistance will be pretty quick. If it is sexual, the development of resistance is comparatively lower. And if the metabolism of pesticide, if we have a pesticide molecule whose metabolism is a bit tough, even the insect finds it difficult to degrade it, then the chance of development is lower because the insect may not be able to degrade it quickly. But if the insecticide can be degraded easily, then insect will develop resistance quickly. I will take the example of synthetic pyrethroid. It is an ester bond. Ester bond can be degraded easily, can be broken down easily. That's why insect develop resistance to pyrethroids pretty quickly. So metabolism of pyrethroids is pretty easy. That's why it develop resistance pretty quickly. And number of target sites for pesticides. Say most of the pesticides have a single target site. Take the case of azadirachtin. Is it acts at a single site? Does it have a single mode of action?
Multiple mode of
Multiple mode of action. Have you ever come across any resistance to azadirachtin? In any insect, have you come across a resistance to neem-based products? No. That's why it has multiple sites of action. If the pesticide is having a single site of action, the chance of development of resistance is pretty high. And the next factor is the host range of the pest. If the host range is narrow, the chance of development of resistance is lower. If the host range is high, The chance of development of resistance is high. I'll take the example of Helicoverpa. Helicoverpa is one of the pests which has evolved resistance pretty quickly. What are all the host plants of Helicoverpa?
Tomato, cotton.
Tomato, cotton, chickpea, pigeon pea. You name whatever it may be, almost all. Pulses, everything. But take the case of any monophagous pest. The chance of development of resistance is pretty low. Another example we can take is DBM, cabbage, cauliflower, almost all the crucifers. Wide host range, the chance of development of resistance is also high. If you have a narrow host range for monophagous pest, the chance of development is pretty low. Why can you give another reason why polyphagous pests develop resistance quickly? Any reason? One more reason. I told you an example. I didn't actually said any reason for that. Why polyphagous pests develop resistance quickly?
It's having wide host range, so
It has,
wide host range.
if it has
In
wide
one or
host.
the other,
Ah,
in one or the other crop, it will get resistance when compared to monophagous pest.
polyphagous. I will put it in another way.
Okay.
If the insect is feeding on several crop, the insect has to detoxify different kinds of allelochemicals, different kinds of secondary metabolites. So it should have a well developed detoxifying mechanism, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So yellow stem borer. Yellow stem borer is a monophagous pest. It is exposed only to rice. It has only to deal with rice. Take the case of Helicoverpa. It has to deal with cotton. It has gossypod. It has to deal with chickpea. It has high content of amino acids. It has to deal with pigeon pea. Another thing, it has to deal with tomato, where it has tomatin, lycopene, etc. So it is exposed to diverse array of phytochemicals, and it has to degrade all these phytochemicals. So it has a broad range of weapons to degrade this chemical. It is just like United States of America with nuclear warfare to or even smaller guns. It's ready with all the arms and ammunition. A polyphagous pest, which can degrade all the uh, secondary metabolites as well as pesticides. So that's why this polyphagous pest develop resistance pretty quickly. Coming to the genetic factors, second is genetic factors that mostly we have discussed. If any population is having a resistant gene, invariably it will develop resistance quickly. If the population is lacking any resistant gene, it may not be able to develop resistance at all. So that's, but mostly every population will have a few individuals with the resistant gene. Only the frequency may vary. The number of resistance mechanism, if fewer resistance mechanism means resistance development will be slow. If we have more number of resistance mechanism, resistance development will be pretty quickly, that you can understand. Gene frequency we have discussed. If you are low in number of individuals with resistant gene, it will develop resistance slowly. If you have more number of individuals with resistant gene, the resistance development will be pretty quickly. And next we will see what is the character of the resistance, whether it is dominant or recessive. You can say if the gene is dominant, how will the resistance development be? Quicker or slower?
Quicker.
Quicker. It will develop quickly. The next one is fitness of resistant individuals. We will have a class on fitness of resistant insects. At that time, we will discuss what is fitness. We have a whole class dedicated to fitness cost of resistance. At the end, that time we will discuss what is. Then cross resistance or multiple resistance. If the insect doesn't have any cross resistance, resistance development will be pretty slow. The insect is having some cross resistance, then it will exhibit resistance pretty quickly. And next is past selection. That means whether the insect is previously exposed to that pesticide. If the insect is not at all exposed to, if you are introducing a pesticide for the first time and we are not used, that molecule is first in a group, a new group of insecticide with a new mode of action, we are introducing for the first time, then the chance of development of resistance is low. But after some time, if the insect is exposed to that pesticide several times, selected for the pesticide several times, the chance of development of resistance will be pretty high. And then modifying genes, that means uh, other genes which can modify the activity of the enzyme. If any modifying genes are present, the insect will develop resistance quickly. If the modifying genes are absent, the chance of development of resistance will be slower. Coming to the operational factors that we have discussed, few of them we have discussed several times. The first one is activity spectrum of insecticide. If you have a broad spectrum insecticide and a narrow spectrum insecticide, which kind of insecticide will develop resistance using broad spectrum or specific insecticide? Which one?
Broad spectrum.
Broad spectrum, because broad spectrum insecticides, if you use a broad spectrum insecticide, all the insects, even the non-target ones, say you are using a broad spectrum pyrethroid, you have a problem of rice temporer in your paddy field, you sprayed for rice temporer with a synthetic pyrethroid, which is a broad spectrum insecticide. Invariably that rice field will have leaf folder, bph, glh, etc. So all those insects will have exposure and there will be selection pressure to that insects also. But take the case of specific pesticide. Say take the case of flubendiamide or chlorantraniliprole. We used it against stem borer. It will have an impact on leaf folder also, but it won't have any selection pressure on BPH or GLH. So they won't develop any resistance even if we are exposed to flubendiamide or chlorantraniliprole. That's the advantage of specific pesticide. Then what is a pesticide application rate? That means how much quantity of pesticide we take. If you use the exact quantity, it's fine. The chance of development of resistance is low. But if you are using lower levels of pesticide or higher levels of pesticide, both it can lead to the greater chances of development of resistance. Lower the label rate, a large number of insects will survive. Higher the dose, all the resistant, homozygous resistant individuals will survive and it will lead to higher levels of resistance. So this pesticide application rate should be perfect, otherwise it will lead to quicker development of resistance. And next one is coverage. You are engaging a labor and if he doesn't cover the area, if he doesn't spray the entire area, if he leaves some area untreated, then the chance of development of resistance is high. But uh, but here there is one catch. This theory always doesn't hold good. Have you studied about refugia in BT cotton?
Yes, sir.
Why we are maintaining refugia?
Inoculum.
To maintain the susceptible.
Yes. So this can be some contradiction in refugia. If you study the refugia concept, this application coverage which I have mentioned here is maybe a bit contradictory. So here the literature says that if the application coverage is poor, the chance of development is resistance is high. There is a chance because if it doesn't, one thing I will take the example is say aphids, whiteflies, mealybugs. Mostly it will be remaining on the undersurface of the leaf. Usually, a laborer sprays only the upper surface of the leaf. All those insects which is remaining on the undersurface of the leaf will be exposed only at only sublethal doses of pesticide. So it can develop resistance quickly. So if the application is poor, the coverage is poor, the insect can develop resistance quickly. And the next one is treatment frequency. That means the number of times sprays are carried out. Take the case of cotton. You can imagine how many times a farmer is going for a spray in cotton and see the level of pesticide resistance in cotton. Take another crop, chili. As the number of sprays increases, the development of resistance also will be high. In low value crops, any low value crop, say ragi, sorghum, maize, etc., where pesticide use is pretty low, resistance development is also low. More you spray, more chance of development of resistance. And the next one is presence of secondary pest. This is what normally occurs, especially if you use a broad spectrum insecticide, especially pyrethroid. So what will happen is, if you go for a spray of a particular kind of pesticide, it will, we have a primary pest, we are targeting a primary pest. The population of primary pest will decrease, but it will lead to the development of secondary pest, because the secondary pest, it opens up a niche which is meant to be explored. That means there won't be any insect feeding on. I'll take a simple field example. What we have observed. This is not with the pesticide. This is with the pheromone. Actually, what Culure, what is meant for managing which insect?
Cucurbita.
Cucurbitae, Bactroseira cucurbitae. So we were using Culure for managing Bactroseira cucurbitae for long, but for the last 4 or 5 years, we are experiencing some failure or a low level of success with Culure. Farmers were complaining that even if we are keeping Culure trap in the field, bitter gourd or snake gourd field, they are getting fruit fly insects. Once we checked, we found out that instead of Bactroseira cucurbitae, we have a population of Bactroseira tau, Bactroseira ciliatus. Several other species of fruit flies are now infesting bitter gourd and snake gourd. Still, cucurbitae is there, but there are other species which have occupied that niche. That means we reduce the population of cucurbitae, that niche became vacant, and another species which has the capacity to occupy that niche, that is the fruit of bitter gourd or snake gourd, it occupied that niche. So secondary pest also occupy. If you remove the primary pest, secondary pest can become primary pest, and since it is exposed, already exposed to that pesticide, it will develop resistance quickly. And next is life stages of insect treated with pesticide. If it is a monovolt, say the insect, all the eggs are laid at a single time, hatches out at a single time, pupates at a single time, and adult emergence happens at a single time, then the chance of development of resistance is pretty low. But if the pest has overlapping generation, the resistance development will be pretty quickly, because once we are spraying the pesticide, a part of the insect will be in the pupal stage, a part of the insect will be in the egg stage. Eggs and pupae are somewhat resistant to insecticide. They will survive, they will attack the crop in the next generation. So if we have a synchronized life stage of an insect, treat the stage when the larvae is there, all the larvae will get killed, okay, fine. But we have overlapping generation, then the scenario is different. Then, which kind of insecticides develop resistance quickly? Which insecticides with shorter persistence or higher persistence? Higher persistence, that we have discussed. Then if we have more number of crops treated, that I will take again the example of Helicoverpa. Helicoverpa will go for a spray in Kharif, we will go for a pesticide spray in cotton. In Rabi, we will go for a pesticide spray in chickpea, again targeting Helicoverpa. In summer, we will go for a pesticide spray in tomato, again targeting Helicoverpa. So all the 3 seasons, Helicoverpa is exposed to pesticide. So again, the chance of development of resistance is more. There is a very good paper from Dr. K.R. Kranti. I think you may have you heard about Dr. K.R. Kranti? Keshav Kranti.
Sir, from
Yes.
cotton.
Yes, cotton. So he has done work with resistance in Helicoverpa in different host plants and in different seasons. It's very good paper. So the next is crop sequence. Again, the same example. Helicoverpa. So instead of cotton in the first crop, if you are going for rice, and in the third crop, if you are going for a fallow, what will happen? Whether the resistance development will be slower or higher. In the second crop only, we will go for chickpea. The same case with Helicoverpa armigera. Instead of first crop with cotton, second crop with chickpea, and third crop with tomato, we advise the farmer to go for first crop with rice, second crop with chickpea, and third crop you advise the farmer to go for fallow. So in that scenario, whether resistance development happens quickly or slowly?
Slowly.
Slowly. That's the crops is separated by time and geography. That means time means we're separating it out on at different seasons. We are separating it out, and geography. That means we are in the neighboring area. We won't be planting any host crop for that particular pest. So that means if a farmer is going for cotton in a particular area, the adjacent village will advise a farmer to go for rice and all. So we'll separate out based on geography also. Then if you are going for IPM, invariably chance of development of resistance is low. If the farmer is relying more on pesticide, resistance development will be quick. And if you are using a pesticide such as pyrethroids, which kills the natural enemy, again chance of development will be pretty high. If you are using selective pesticide which doesn't harm any natural enemy, then it will reduce the chances of development of pesticide resistance. I will take again one example. I think in 1970s, pyrethroids were first introduced in our country in 70, and it was widely used up to 80s. And in the 70s, because of the widespread use of this pyrethroid, we had a huge outbreak of BPH in Kuttanad area of Kerala. Because farmers were highly convinced with the pyrethroids at that time. Now also farmers are highly convinced with pyrethroid because once you spray a pyrethroid, immediately you can see the death of because it has quick knockdown action. Because of that, insect will die and fall over the water surface. So just after the spray, if they inspect the crop, you can see dead insect on the crop. So seeing is believing. Farmers were highly convinced with pyrethroids. They started using pyrethroids in a large scale in rice ecosystem. But one drastic effect was that adverse effect of use of pyrethroids was that it killed all the natural enemies. So this natural enemy population were maintaining or controlling the population of BPH, a secondary pest at that time in rice. So as all the natural enemy got killed, BPH started multiplying without any natural enemy population, and BPH became a huge pest over there. So a broad spectrum insecticide, a non-selective pesticide, can affect the natural enemy and can lead to faster development of resistance. So that was just a briefing of what are all the factors which favors. This I got from a book that's where added over here. Anything, any clarifications you need? Any doubt?
No, sir.
No. Okay, then tomorrow we'll start methods of detection of resistance. Okay. At what time we can have the class tomorrow? 3 to 4, is it fine?
Sir, they have class on DM. I will discuss with them and I will inform you.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.